Good morning, everybody. Welcome back. It is Monday, July 13th. I hope all of you had a great weekend. It was beautiful summer weather and we got some needed rain also. So it was a good weekend overall. I'd like to thank all the VFI staff that covered my shifts on Fridays so I could have a day off. That was great. Thank you, Matt. For doing the morning talk and making that amazing homemade salsa. It was a great recipe. I'm a salsa fan as well, so anytime it's fresh and homemade is the best. Also, thank you, Ray, for ending the day for me on Friday. And thank you in advance for this Friday, too. I've used my vacation days and have decided to take Fridays off in July to spend time with family. So I do appreciate all the staff covering. Today, we have a full schedule for you starting at 10. Remember, we have a fitness class in the morning now. Steph will be on immediately following me this morning at 9:30, and she is going to go over the workout of the day. So make sure you check her out and join in for the 10 a.m. Zoom class with us, especially for those of you that slacked over the weekend. Also, today at 11, John will be on with assistive technology, and I'll be back at noon with an art idea. And then our health and wellness afternoon starts with Brian with Words of Wellness at 1 and Conversations with Kelly at 2. And we have a new addition to our programming. Ray is going to be joining us with a midday stretch at 3, and I'll be wrapping up the day at 5. So I hope you guys stay with us all day and enjoy our live broadcast for you. This morning I have a recipe for you. It is a little bit more challenging than our typical ones. It's a little more time consuming and a few more steps involved, but I know you can do it because you've been cooking right along with me for all these months. And what we're going to be using today, I got some fresh zucchini from my dad's garden on Friday, which looks delicious. So we are going to be making a chocolate zucchini cheesecake muffin. Yes, super fancy name with some fancy instructions. So I will go over the ingredients as I prepare the dish this morning, and then also I will attach the recipe in the comments below just so you can follow along at home afterwards. It is a rather lengthy list of ingredients, so I'm not going to go over it now, but I'll go over it as I proceed through the recipe. So you're going to need a couple bowls. You're not going to get out of dishes this morning, folks. You're going to need about 2 different bowls because we have to make our muffin mix and our cheesecake mix. I'm actually using a 3rd bowl because I am going to mix my dry ingredients separately today just because we're incorporating zucchini, which can be a little bit harder to mix in. So I'm going to want my dry ingredients prepared and mixed and when I go to add them to the wet ingredients. So what you're going to need, though, let me just tell you this part. When you get to your 1 cup of zucchini, finely grated, what I found works really well, I used about a medium to small zucchini from the garden, and what I like to use, instead of trying to use a grater or a food processor, which can be messy with the zucchini, if you have one of the zucchini noodle makers at home, it works excellent. And then I just chopped it up into a fine grade, as you can see here. So I found that was a much simpler process in grading my zucchini. I've used the cheese graters or things like that in the past, and they get super messy, and the vegetable, because there's a lot of water in it, can get slippery, and you could potentially cut your knuckles on the grater. So I found that the noodle maker works the best for doing my zucchini. Just a suggestion, I just found that it works really well for myself. But in the meantime, we're gonna get going on our chocolate zucchini cheesecake muffins. So what we're gonna do, I'm gonna make the batter first, a chocolate zucchini batter. So what we're going to do, is we are going to mix our dry ingredients in this bowl right here. So I am going to put our sugars in. We have 2 different sugars. We're going to be using a 1/2 cup of a brown sugar and a 1/4 cup of a white. For my brown sugar, I am going to use my coconut sugar. That's just my go-to. But again, you can use a traditional brown sugar as well. So I'm going to add that in. I'm going to get my measuring cup out. Bear with me. It's a little bit of a lengthy recipe, but I know you're capable of it. We've been doing super quick ones, but Every once in a while, good things come to those who wait, so it might take a little bit longer. So I am going to add the brown sugar and then a 1/4 cup of the white sugar. Let me get it out. And then we're also going to add some baking soda, baking powder, and then there's going to be a few seasonings as well in this recipe. So there's our sugar, and our baking cocoa will be going in as well as our dry ingredients. And we are going to be adding, I just got to follow my recipe over here, a 1/4 cup of the baking cocoa. I like to use cacao. It's a little less processed, so I'm going to add that in as well. And then we're going to add a teaspoon of baking soda, a teaspoon of baking powder, so our muffins will rise and be super fluffy. And then we're going to add a little bit of cinnamon and nutmeg, which I thought was an interesting ingredient, but for our chocolate muffins, cheesecake muffins. So there's our baking soda. And now we're going to add a 1/4 teaspoon of nutmeg and a 1/4 teaspoon of cinnamon as well. So, pardon me, it's going to be a teaspoon of cinnamon. So we're going to add that in. These are all our dry ingredients, and there weren't too, I mean, there were several ingredients, but it's not too much, so I did just use a small bowl. And then our sprinkle of nutmeg, which is a 1/2 teaspoon. And then I'm just going to stir these together. And then we're going to do our dry ingredients and then add them together. We're going to also have to add our flour in here. And for our flour, you can choose whichever type of flour you like, but I am going to be using a 1/2 and 1/2. So I'm going to use a cup of almond flour and a cup of the regular white flour. I'm going to wait and add those in a moment. So I just wanted to get all my smaller dry ingredients together, and then we'll add the rest when we add them into the larger bowl. Okay, so for our wet ingredients, we're going to add them in this bowl, which will consist of our oil, which would be 2/3 cup of oil. I'm using coconut oil today. You can use canola oil or whatever oil you typically like to use in your baking. I like to use the coconut oil. If you're using coconut oil, make sure that you melt it down, or I bought the liquid coconut oil this time that you can get in your baking aisle at your local grocer. You can also use butter. Butter, just make sure you melt it down. That is an oil. And now we're going to add a teaspoon of vanilla, and then we're going to add 2 eggs to this as well, and then some buttermilk. If you do not have buttermilk at home, just add a tablespoon to each cup of milk you need. I only needed 1/2 of that, so I only added 1/2 tablespoon to my 1/2 cup of milk to create buttermilk. So I'm going to add that in as well. And then we will be adding our shredded zucchini, which is a cup of shredded zucchini, tightly packed. My zucchini being fresh out of the garden, instead of bought from a larger producing farm at the grocery store. It's a little bit drier, which you'll get when you have homegrown zucchinis. So when we get going here, and it says in the recipe that you might need to add a little bit more water if yours seems too dry, we may need to do that. But we'll see when we get to that part in the step. All right, so we have all of our wet ingredients incorporated. We're going to add our 2 eggs to this as well, making sure you're mixing them in fully and incorporate that. For our chocolate, we've been doing so many bananas, chocolate zucchini cheesecake muffins. So once we get the batter done, we're going to be making the cheesecake filling. I'm also going to show you how to put them together in the muffin tin, because it's an interesting construction before baking. So we're going to want to do that too here for you. All right, so we stirred together our dry ingredients, and now we're stirring together our wet ingredients. We added our buttermilk, and now we're going to add our dry ingredients to our mixture here. So here's all our dry ingredients, which we're also going to be adding our flour to. So as we're mixing it up, making sure you scrape the sides of the bowl to get all those dry ingredients incorporated. And now I'm going to get my flours out. Again, I like to mix it up between a healthier alternative flour, and but I still, because I might be gifting these to some lucky or unlucky, depending how they turn out, people, I'm going to add some white flour too to keep the integrity of the original recipe. So we got that mixed in, and now I'm going to be adding my flours. We're going to add 2 cups. So I'm going to do a cup of the almond, and then a cup of the white flour. I'm also, to be honest, using half and half because almond flour is very expensive as well. Although I like to invest in ingredients, healthy ingredients. That's where I like to spend my grocery money instead of buying junk food. I will spend the extra money I save on that and buy a little better quality ingredients for my cooking and baking. Again, it's just a personal preference. All right. So there's 1 cup of the white flour as well, and we're going to mix all of that together. And then we're going to add some chocolate chips to the muffin as well. So we're going to stir all this in, making sure that we get all the dry ingredients scraped off the sides of the bowl. Then we're going to move on to the cream cheese filling, which we're going to be making also, because we are going to be filling these with the cream cheese, our muffins, before we bake them, which I have never done before, so it'll be an interesting, for me as well, a new experience. So we'll see how it turns out. I will definitely share my results with you when we're done baking in the comments, and along with the recipe as always. All right, so there is our muffin batter, which is looking delicious. We're going to add about half the chocolate chips at this time. So we're going to add about a half a cup of the mini. If you don't have the mini chips, you can obviously use the regular chips. Maybe just crush them up a little bit in a little baggie. Again, I like, this called for the mini, but I also like the mini because I feel they're a little more evenly distributed through the batter when you bake with them. All right, so we're gonna set our muffin batter aside. So I'm gonna set it back here, and I'm gonna grab our cream cheese filling that we're about to make. So it's gonna take 1 bar, 8 ounces of cream cheese. Then we're gonna add a 1/4 cup of sugar. And it's gonna take, this is interesting too, maybe to thicken it up a little bit. We're gonna add a little bit of flour to this. We're gonna add about 1 tablespoon of flour. I will choose my almond flour since it's open and ready to go. And then a teaspoon of vanilla. And we're gonna mix this together for our cream cheese filling. And then all we have left to do is prepare our baking dish and put our muffins together inside it. So let's make sure your cream cheese has been softened. Mine has been sitting out, so it is pliable and easier to work with. It's much easier to incorporate other ingredients into softened cream cheese, and it keeps it smooth. If your cream cheese is too cold and is too hard, you'll definitely get little cream cheese lumps in your recipe. So make sure that you take the time to let your cream cheese soften, or put it in the bowl like I did and put it in the microwave for about 10 to 15 seconds, and that will also do the trick if you didn't take it out in time, as I did not. Perfect. Okay, so now what we're gonna do is we're gonna prepare our muffin dish, our pan. I believe this makes about 18. I just have 1 pan out ready to go for everybody. Then I'll finish the rest later. So we're gonna lightly grease our muffin tin. And then we are going to fill it with a little bit of batter, so put it about halfway. Typically, we fill muffins about 3/4 of the way. We're only gonna fill it halfway because we're also gonna put some cream cheese in the center of it prior to baking. So let me find, I'm like, where did I put the batter? All right, so let me get out a scoop to scoop our batter. So I'm only gonna fill them about halfway. Again, I have not done this yet. In the past, made one like this, so we'll see how it turns out. I'm using about 2 tablespoons in each one. And I'll do about three to six here just to demonstrate, and then I'll get the cream cheese ready. So it says to fill it in about halfway, and then we're gonna put our cream cheese filling in a Ziploc bag and cut the tip off, and we're gonna pipe it in. If you have a piping bag, feel free to do it that way as well. The Ziploc bag is just a quick kitchen tip if you don't have a piping bag, or it is much quicker to use as well. Then you don't have to go through the whole cleaning process of your piping bag. All right, so they're about halfway filled. I will set that back aside, and I am going to put our cream cheese filling in our Ziploc bag right here. Another tip for this, if you have a glass, let me see if I have one nearby, I'll show you it. And you don't have someone to assist you in the kitchen, sometimes you have trouble filling your piping bag, take the tip and set it in the bottom of a glass and then fold the bag over it. That way you can get your filling right in the bag, and it's a more hands-free, cleaner technique. Because if you ever tried filling a piping bag on your own, it can be kind of tricky if you've never done it before. All right, so then you can just push it down in, and the bag will go down in the cup more as you fill it. And there we have it. Let me get the rest out. Waste not, want not, especially with the cream cheese filling. All right, so now I have all my cheesecake filling into the piping bag. I'm gonna get my kitchen scissors out and just cut a very small tip off. Depending on how fast you want it to come out of your piping bag will determine how much of a, how far up you want to cut it. I want to be able to control it pretty well, so I'm just making a small slice. So make sure the air is out and kind of twist the top, and that will keep your cream cheese from going back up towards the top. So they said to pipe some just down into the center of the batter. So I'm going to do that. And then we're gonna go back and sprinkle a few chocolate chips on top of each one. All right, so there, I put it inside. You can set that aside. I'm gonna get my chocolate chips, sprinkle a few on top. These are going to bake in a 400-degree oven for, I believe, let's check on the baking time here, 14 to 15 minutes. So again, it didn't take terribly a lot of time to make these. It was just a little more challenging. You have to make sure you read your instructions and are following them, because we had multiple ingredients. So the more ingredients, the more challenging it can be, and the steps. But there we go. We're going to pop these in the oven. Our chocolate zucchini cheesecake muffins. That is a mouthful in itself. So we'll see how it turns out. I will post my results. I'll post the recipe, and I'll definitely see you guys at 10 for Zoom Fit. Hope you guys have a great day. See you then.